white cane clattered against the concrete steps of Riverside Preparatory Academy with a hollow, metallic sound that made everyone in the courtyard stop and stare. Alex Harrington stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, his fingers trembling as they searched the air for the mobility tool that had been kicked from his grasp. His sightless eyes, pale gray and unfocused, moved uselessly behind his glasses as cruel laughter erupted around him. "Oops," Tyler Brennan said, his voice dripping with mock concern. "Did someone lose something?" The 16-year-old blind boy dropped to his knees, palms flat against the cold pavement, sweeping his hands in desperate arcs. The September morning sun beat down on his back as he searched, his cheeks burning with humiliation. Around him, dozens of students formed a loose circle, their phones out, recording, whispering, but no one moved to help. "Stay with this story. What happens next will change everything about how we understand courage." "Please," Alex said quietly, his voice barely audible. "I need my cane." Tyler kicked it again, sending it skittering another 5 feet across the courtyard. The sound of it scraping against concrete made Alex flinch. His fingers found nothing but empty air and scattered leaves. "You need your cane?" Marcus Chen joined in, picking up the white mobility aid and holding it high above his head. "You mean this stick? What's so special about a stick, Harrington?" Alex stood slowly, using the wall to guide himself upright. His backpack hung askew on one shoulder. His carefully pressed shirt was already wrinkled from his fall. "It helps me navigate," he said, his voice steadier now, but laced with resignation. This wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. "Please give it back." "Helps you navigate?" Tyler laughed, moving closer. "How about I help you navigate? Take 3 steps forward, blind boy. Let's see how well you do." The circle of students tightened. A few laughed nervously. Most just watched with the detached curiosity of people watching a nature documentary, fascinated by the predator, indifferent to the prey. Alex's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. He'd learned long ago that resistance only made it worse. Compliance sometimes shortened the torment. He stood still, hands at his sides, waiting for it to be over. "What, you deaf too?" Marcus taunted. "Walk forward. 3 steps. Or are you too scared without your little stick?" Somewhere behind the crowd, a girl's voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk. "Give him back his cane." 15 years earlier, the hospital room was too white, too bright, too sterile for the magnitude of what Dr. Patricia Reeves was about to say. Ethan Harrington sat beside his wife's bed, holding their newborn son against his chest. The baby was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of dark hair, and a tiny, peaceful face. "Mr. Harrington, Mrs. Harrington," Dr. Reeves began, her clipboard held like a shield. "The tests we ran have confirmed our initial observations. Your son was born with bilateral enophthalmia. His optic nerves never fully developed. He's blind, completely blind. He'll never have sight." The words hung in the air like smoke from a grenade. Catherine Harrington's face went blank. Not sad, not shocked, just empty. She turned her head away from the baby, toward the window, and said nothing. Ethan pulled Alex closer, his mind racing through 1,000 questions, 1,000 fears, 1,000 futures that had just been rewritten. "What does that mean for him?" he asked. "What kind of life can he have?" "A full one," Dr. Reeves said carefully. "With support, training, and early intervention, blind children can thrive. They learn to read through Braille, navigate with mobility aids, develop heightened senses. A full life." Catherine's voice was brittle, sharp. "How is that a full life? He'll never see a sunset, never drive a car, never." Her voice broke, and she turned further away. Ethan looked down at his son, who was making small, content sounds against his chest. "We'll figure it out," he said softly, though he didn't know if he was talking to his wife or to himself. Catherine never held Alex again that day, or the next, or the week after that. Who said that? Tyler spun around, his face flushed with irritation at being interrupted. The crowd parted slightly, revealing a black girl stepping forward from the shadows of the main building. She was tall, maybe 5'8", with dark coiled hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. Her jeans were faded, her backpack clearly secondhand, and her expression was carved from stone. Imani Johnson walked with deliberate slowness, her eyes locked on Tyler Brennan. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't look at her phone. She looked at the bully holding the cane like it was a trophy. "I said," she repeated, voice calm but absolute, "give him back his cane." Tyler smirked, glancing at Marcus. "And who the hell are you?" "I'm the person telling you to stop being a coward," Imani said, stopping about 10 feet away. "You're 17 years old, picking on a blind kid. You think that makes you tough? You think that makes you somebody?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Phones shifted, now recording the confrontation instead of just the humiliation. "This doesn't concern you," Marcus said, stepping protectively beside Tyler. "Walk away. It concerns anyone with a shred of decency," Imani shot back. "Now give him his cane and apologize." Tyler laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Or what? You gonna make me?" Alex, still standing against the wall, tilted his head slightly toward Imani's voice. He didn't know who she was, but her words felt like oxygen in a room where he'd been suffocating. "I'm not asking again," Imani said, taking another step forward. Tyler's smirk faded. He wasn't used to being challenged. He dropped the cane onto the ground and stepped on it, his sneaker pressing down on the middle of the white shaft. "You want it? Come get it." 13 years earlier. "Dada," Alex said, his small fingers exploring Ethan's face with the intense curiosity of a 3-year-old. "Dada." Ethan sat cross-legged on the living room floor, his tie loosened, his suit jacket discarded. Around them were scattered wooden blocks with raised letters, an early Braille learning toy the occupational therapist had recommended. "That's right, buddy. Dada. Can you feel this one?" He guided Alex's hand to a block with a raised A. "A," Alex mimicked, his fingers tracing the bumps. "That's the letter A," Ethan said, his voice thick with pride. "And this one." He moved Alex's hand to another block. But. "B. That's right. You're so smart, Alex." The front door opened and closed. Catherine walked in, still wearing her gym clothes, earbuds dangling around her neck. She glanced at the scene on the floor, father and son, surrounded by learning tools, and her expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "How was your session?" Ethan asked, looking up with a hopeful smile. "Fine," she said curtly, heading toward the stairs. "We're working on letters. He's really getting it. Catherine, you should see." "He can't see, Ethan. That's the whole problem." The words were out before she could stop them, and they landed like a slap. Ethan's smile died. Alex's fingers stilled on the blocks, as if sensing the sudden tension in the room. "I didn't mean," Catherine started, but the damage was done. She turned and walked upstairs, leaving Ethan and Alex in the heavy silence she'd created. Ethan pulled his son into his lap, holding him close. "It's okay, buddy," he whispered. "We're okay. Just you and me." Imani moved before anyone could process what was happening. She closed the distance between herself and Tyler in 4 long strides, bent down, and yanked the cane out from under his shoe with such force that he stumbled backward. "Hey!" Tyler shouted, regaining his balance. "You can't just." Imani held the cane protectively and turned to Alex. Her voice softened completely. "Hey, I'm walking toward you with your cane. Okay? Don't be startled." Alex nodded, his throat tight. He heard her footsteps approach, steady, unhurried, and then felt the familiar grip of his mobility aid pressed gently into his palm. "Thank you," he managed, his voice cracking slightly. "You good?" Imani asked quietly, studying his face. "I'm fine, Alex Lid." "No, you're not. But you will be." Imani turned back to face Tyler and Marcus, who were both standing there looking shocked and angry. Tyler's face had gone red. "You just assaulted me. I could have you expelled." "Assaulted you?" Imani laughed without humor. "I picked up a mobility aid you were standing on." You assaulted him by taking it in the first place. Mobility aids for disabled people are legally protected. You want to involve administration? Let's go. Right now. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Tyler's confidence wavered. That's what I thought, Imani said. Now apologize to him. I'm not apologizing to. Apologize. To him. The crowd was dead silent now. Every phone was pointed at the standoff. This would be on social media within minutes, Imani knew. Good. Let it be. Tyler looked around, seeing his audience, seeing his reputation on the line. Whatever, he muttered. Sorry. Look at him when you say it, Imani demanded. And say his name. Tyler's jaw worked furiously. For a long moment it seemed like he might refuse. Then, sorry, Alex. Now walk away, Imani said. Both of you, and if I ever see you near him again, we won't be having a conversation. We'll be having a very different kind of problem. Tyler and Marcus exchanged glances, then pushed through the crowd, muttering curses under their breath. The onlookers began to disperse, the show over, already typing out their versions of what had happened. Imani turned back to Alex, who was standing very still, his cane gripped tightly in both hands. You okay? She asked again, gentler this time. I don't even know who you are, Alex said. Imani Johnson, Jr. I've seen you around. Why did you help me? Imani was quiet for a moment. Because somebody should have. The divorce papers sat on the kitchen table between them like a loaded gun. Alex was asleep upstairs, 5 years old, dreaming whatever dreams blind children dream, while his parents dismantled their family in whispers. I can't do this anymore, Ethan, Catherine said, her voice hollow. I've tried. God knows I've tried. But every time I look at him, all I see is everything he'll never have. Everything he'll never be. He can be anything he wants to be, Ethan said fiercely. His blindness doesn't define. It defines everything. Catherine's composure cracked. Do you know what it's like? Watching other mothers with their children at the park, at birthday parties, doing normal things? And I'm there with a child who can't see the presents, can't play the games, can't what? Can't be loved by his own mother. The words hung between them like an accusation. Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of frustration, not sadness. I'm not a good mother to him. I don't know how to be. Maybe he's better off without me. He's 5 years old. He needs his mother. He needs someone. It doesn't have to be me. Catherine stood, pushing the papers toward Ethan. I've already signed them. Full custody to you. I won't fight it. I need to go. Where? Anywhere that doesn't remind me of my failures. Ethan stared at the signature on the divorce papers, her handwriting so familiar, now so final. What do I tell him? Tell him whatever you want. Tell him I'm a monster. You wouldn't be wrong. She left that night. Alex asked about his mother every day for 3 months, then every week for 6 months, then occasionally for another year. Eventually, he stopped asking. Ethan never told him the truth, that his mother had chosen to leave because loving him had been too hard. Instead, he told Alex that sometimes adults grow apart, that it wasn't his fault, that love comes in many forms. And Ethan loved enough for 2 parents. He had to. Across the courtyard, partially hidden behind the bronze statue of the school's founder, Ethan Harrington stood perfectly still. He'd arrived at Riverside Preparatory 15 minutes earlier for a surprise visit. He tried to check on Alex once a week, usually from a distance, just to ensure his son was safe. The principal knew. The security team knew. But Alex didn't. Ethan had seen everything. The cane being kicked, the humiliation, the crowd's complicity, and then her. This girl with fire in her eyes and steel in her voice, stepping in when no one else would. His hands had curled into fists when Tyler stepped on the cane. His instinct had been to intervene, to cross that courtyard and teach these privileged, cruel children what real power looked like. But he'd learned over the years that swooping in to save Alex only made the bullying worse, painted a target on his son's back. The kid whose billionaire dad fights his battles. So Ethan had forced himself to watch, to trust that Alex could handle it, to believe in the independence they'd worked so hard to build. And then Imani Johnson had appeared. Ethan watched her now as she stood beside his son, speaking quietly. He watched Alex's posture relax incrementally, the defensive hunch of his shoulders easing just slightly. He watched the stranger give his son something Ethan's money never could, dignity through solidarity. His phone buzzed. Marcus, his head of security. "Sir, do you want me to have those boys expelled? I have video evidence." Ethan typed back, "Not yet. Send me everything you have on the girl who intervened. Imani Johnson. I want her full file on my desk in an hour." He took one last look at his son. Safe now, thanks to someone who had no reason to care, and walked back to his car. "Dad, I can do it myself," 8-year-old Alex said, his small hands fumbling with the Braille label maker. "I know you can, buddy," Ethan said, sitting on his hands to resist the urge to help. "I'm just here for moral support." They were labeling everything in Alex's new bedroom. Dresser drawers, bookshelf sections, light switches. Even though Alex couldn't use them, he needed to know where they were for guests. The occupational therapist had suggested making the space as independently navigable as possible. "This one says, SS Socks," Alex sounded out, his fingers moving across the Braille dots with practiced precision. "Perfect. Now stick it on the drawer." Alex carefully applied the label, then moved to the next drawer. "Dad." "Yeah. Why doesn't Mom ever visit?" Ethan's heart clenched. They'd had versions of this conversation before, but Alex was getting older, more perceptive, more aware of what was missing. "Your mom, she loves you, Alex, but she has her own challenges, her own things she's working through. Does she not visit because I'm blind?" The question was so direct, so painfully insightful, that Ethan felt his breath catch. He moved closer, kneeling beside his son. "Hey, look at me." He immediately regretted the phrasing, but Alex turned toward his voice anyway. "Your mom has issues that have nothing to do with how incredible you are. You are smart, funny, kind, and yes, blind. And being blind is just one part of who you are. Anyone who can't see that, anyone who can't see you, that's their loss, not yours." Alex was quiet for a long moment. "Do you wish I wasn't blind?" "No." The answer was immediate, honest. "I wish the world was kinder to people who are different. I wish you didn't have to work twice as hard to do things others take for granted. But you, Alex, you're exactly who you're supposed to be. And I wouldn't change a single thing about you." Alex smiled, small, tentative, but real. "Can we label the closet next?" "Whatever you want, buddy. Whatever you want." Imani Johnson sat in the school library that afternoon, trying to focus on her chemistry homework while her mind replayed the morning's confrontation. Her hands were still shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash that always followed standing up to people like Tyler Brennan. She'd learned to stand up the hard way. 10-year-old Imani sat in the back corner of her 5th-grade classroom at Riverside Elementary, her hand raised high, desperate to answer the question Mrs. Peterson had just asked about the Civil War. She'd studied so hard the night before, reading by flashlight under her covers because the electricity in their apartment had been turned off again. "Anyone?" Mrs. Peterson asked, scanning the room. Her eyes passed right over Imani. "I know," Imani said quietly. "Someone must know this," Mrs. Peterson continued, as if Imani hadn't spoken. "Courtney Harrison, blonde, pretty, always wearing new clothes," raised her hand lazily. "Was it about slavery?" "Yes." "Excellent, Courtney. The Civil War was primarily fought over the issue of slavery." Imani lowered her hand, her cheeks burning. This happened constantly. She could have the right answer, could follow every rule, could work harder than anyone else and still be invisible. She'd learned early that being a black girl from the poor side of town came with an invisibility cloak she never asked for and couldn't take off. During recess, she saw 3 older boys surrounding Marcus Chen. Yes, the same Marcus who would later become a bully himself, near the monkey bars. They were taunting him, pulling at his backpack, pushing him back and forth between them. Imani walked over. "Leave him alone." "Mind your business," one of the boys said. "I am." Being a decent person is my business. They laughed at her, but something in her stance, feet planted, chin up, eyes hard, made them reconsider. They walked away, muttering about crazy girls. Marcus looked at her with surprise and gratitude. Thanks. Don't mention it. But no one thanked her later when she was called to the principal's office because one of those boys claimed she'd threatened him. No one believed her version of events. Her mother had to leave work early, losing half a day's pay, to come to the school. She's always been a good girl. Her mother, Diane Johnson, said firmly to the principal, if she intervened, it's because someone needed help. Nevertheless, Mrs. Johnson, Imani needs to learn that there are proper channels for reporting bullying. She can't take matters into her own hands. Young Imani sat there, silent, learning a bitter lesson. Sometimes doing the right thing gets you punished. Sometimes standing up means standing alone. But she kept standing anyway. Ethan Harrington sat in his home office, a massive space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The file on Imani Johnson lay open before him. Imani Diane Johnson, age 16, junior at Riverside Preparatory Academy, academic scholarship recipient, GPA 3.87, mother, Diane Johnson, registered nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital, father, Leonard Johnson, deceased, construction accident when Imani was 12, current residence, 2-bedroom apartment in Brookside District, financial status, lower income, mother working double shifts to cover expenses not covered by scholarship. Disciplinary record, none. Extracurricular activities, debate club, volunteer tutor for elementary students, part-time weekend job at Corner Grounds coffee shop. Ethan leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. This girl was working her way through one of the most elite schools in the state, helping pay her own way, maintaining excellent grades, and had just put herself between his son and danger without a second thought. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Harrington, Alex is home. Send him in. A moment later, Alex entered, his cane sweeping familiar paths across the floor he'd memorized years ago. Hey, Dad. Hey, buddy. How was school? Alex hesitated, and Ethan could see the internal debate playing across his son's face. Should he mention the morning? Should he pretend everything was fine? It was okay, Alex said finally. Same as always. Ethan's jaw tightened. He wanted to tell Alex he'd seen everything, that he knew about the bullying, that he was going to make sure those boys never bothered him again. But he'd promised himself years ago not to be the kind of father who smothered his son's independence with overprotection. Just okay? Ethan pressed gently. Alex sank into the chair across from his father's desk. Dad, do you ever get tired of people underestimating you? Every single day. Why? Because I'm tired of people thinking I'm weak. I'm blind, not broken, but everyone treats me like I'm made of glass. Or worse, like I'm invisible. Not everyone, Ethan said quietly. Alex tilted his head. What do you mean? Nothing. Just, there are good people out there. People who see strength instead of weakness. Yeah. Alex's expression softened slightly. Yeah, there are. The next morning, Ethan waited in his car outside Corner Grounds coffee shop at 6:47 a.m. According to Imani's schedule, her shift started at 7 o'clock on Saturdays. He debated this approach for hours. He could have summoned her to his office, could have sent an intermediary, could have approached her at school. But something about this moment required informality, authenticity. At 6:52, Imani walked up the sidewalk, her backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in. She pushed through the coffee shop door without noticing the Mercedes sedan parked across the street. Ethan gave her 5 minutes to get settled, then followed. The morning rush hadn't started yet. Only 2 other customers occupied tables, both absorbed in their laptops. Imani stood behind the counter, tying her apron, when the bell above the door chimed. Good morning. I'll be right with you, she called, not looking up. Take your time, Ethan said. Something in his voice made her glance up. She froze, recognition flickering across her face. Anyone who attended Riverside Prep knew Ethan Harrington. His donations had funded the new science building. His name was on plaques throughout the school. "Mr. Harrington," she said carefully, professional mask sliding into place. "What can I get you?" "Coffee, black, and a few minutes of your time if you can spare it." Imani's eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded. She poured his coffee, refused his $50 bill. "Sir, it's $4, and jerked her head toward a corner table. "Trina, can you watch the counter for a second?" They sat across from each other, and Ethan took a moment to study her up close. She had her mother's eyes, intelligent, wary, kind. Her father's stubborn chin, according to the photos he'd seen. "I saw what you did yesterday," Ethan said simply. "For my son." Imani's posture stiffened. "I didn't know he was your son. Not that it would have mattered." "I know. That's why I'm here. Look, if this is about Tyler Brennan or his family, I don't regret." "This isn't about them," Ethan interrupted gently. "This is about you. Why did you help Alex?" Imani was quiet for a long moment, her fingers wrapped around her own coffee mug. "Because I know what it's like when no one helps you, when everyone just watches." "Tell me." And slowly, haltingly, she did. She told him about being invisible in classrooms, about her father's death and the suffocating grief that followed, about working to help her mother pay bills, about learning that the world doesn't reward fairness or kindness, but she kept trying anyway because someone had to. Ethan listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he said, "Alex told me last night that he's tired of people underestimating him. I think you know something about that too." "Everyone underestimates me," Imani said with a slight smile. "I'm used to it. What if they didn't? What if someone invested in your potential the way you invested in my son's safety?" Imani's eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that courage and character are rare. You have both. And I'd like to help you build whatever future you're dreaming of." "Mr. Harrington, I don't need charity. This isn't charity. It's recognition. There's a difference." Ethan pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. "Open it when I leave. Think about it. And if you decide you want to accept, my contact information is inside." He stood, left a $100 bill on the table despite her earlier protest, and walked out before she could respond. Imani stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Then, hands trembling slightly, she opened it. Inside was a letter on heavy cardstock. "Imani Johnson, yesterday you did something that money cannot buy and power cannot command. You stood up when standing up was difficult. You protected someone who couldn't protect himself. You demonstrated the kind of character I've spent my life trying to instill in my son. In recognition of your courage and your potential, the Harrington Foundation is offering you 1. Full 4-year college scholarship to any university you're admitted to, including room, board, books, and living expenses. 2. A paid internship position at Harrington Industries each summer during your college years. 3. A mentorship program connecting you with leaders in your chosen field. 4. A one-time grant of $50,000 to your mother, Diane Johnson, in appreciation for raising a daughter of such remarkable character. This offer has no strings attached. You don't owe me anything. You don't owe Alex anything. You already gave us both something priceless, proof that good people still exist. If you accept, contact me. If you decline, I'll respect your decision. Either way, thank you for what you did. Ethan Harrington." Imani read it 3 times, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall while customers could see. $52,000. Her mother could stop working double shifts, could pay off the medical bills from her father's accident, could breathe, a full scholarship. She could go to any college without drowning in debt. This was real. This was happening. Her hands shook as she folded the letter and tucked it carefully back into the envelope. By Monday morning, everything had changed. The video of Imani's confrontation with Tyler had gone viral. Not just school viral, but viral. Millions of views. News outlets picking it up. "Courageous teen stands up to bullies tormenting blind student." The comments were overwhelmingly supportive, though Imani tried not to read them. Tyler Brennan and Marcus Chen had been suspended for a week. Their parents, wealthy, connected, used to making problems disappear, had discovered that video evidence and public outcry made this problem unsolvable. Tyler's father, a corporate attorney, had tried to call Ethan Harrington to smooth things over. Ethan had declined the call. At school, people treated Imani differently now. Some with genuine respect, others with performative admiration, a few with resentment. She'd made them look bad by being brave while they'd stood silent. Alex found her between classes on Tuesday. Imani. His voice was tentative. He'd asked around to figure out who she was, what her schedule was, where he might find her. She turned, surprised. Alex. Can we talk? They found a quiet alcove near the library. Alex fidgeted with his cane, uncharacteristically nervous. I wanted to thank you, he said, for what you did. No one's ever... People don't usually. You don't have to thank me, Imani said gently. Yes, I do. You put yourself at risk for me. You didn't have to do that. Actually, I did. I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd walked past. Alex smiled slightly. My dad said the same thing. He said people like you are rare. You talked to your dad about it? He kind of saw the whole thing. He checks on me sometimes at school without telling me. Overprotective father thing. Alex's smile faded. He told me he's offered you some kind of opportunity with the foundation. He did. Imani hadn't told anyone yet, still processing it herself. Are you going to accept? I don't know. Feels like too much. It's not too much, Alex said firmly. You deserve it. And if my dad thinks you deserve it, my dad who doesn't trust anyone, then you definitely deserve it. They talked for a while longer, discovering they had more in common than expected. Both were overachievers driven by proving something to a world that doubted them. Both carried the weight of absent parents, his by choice, hers by tragedy. Both understood loneliness in crowded rooms. Can I ask you something? Alex said eventually. Sure. Why weren't you scared? Of Tyler and Marcus? They're twice your size. Imani considered the question. I was scared, she admitted. But I was more angry than scared. And I learned a long time ago that bullies count on you being more scared than angry. I wish I was more like that. You are, Imani said. You stood there knowing they could hurt you, and you kept your dignity. That takes a different kind of bravery. Alex looked like he might cry. Instead, he laughed, soft, surprised. Want to be friends? Yeah, Imani said. I'd like that. The Harrington Foundation Gala was the social event of the season. 500 guests, black tie, a fundraiser that would generate millions for educational initiatives. Ethan normally dreaded these events, the performative charity and forced small talk, but tonight was different. Tonight he had a speech to give. Alex stood beside him backstage, fidgeting with his bow tie. I'm nervous, he admitted. You'll be fine, Ethan assured him. Just speak from the heart. But all those people will be honored to hear from you. The master of ceremonies announced them. Ladies and gentlemen, Ethan Harrington and his son, Alex. They walked on stage together, Alex's hand on his father's arm, his cane folded and tucked away. When they reached the microphone, Ethan spoke first. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. Tonight, we're celebrating education, opportunity, and the power of one person to change another person's life. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. 3 weeks ago, my son was being bullied at school. He was humiliated, targeted for his disability, and surrounded by dozens of students who did nothing. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the usual feel-good speech. One person intervened, Ethan continued. One 16-year-old girl who had every reason to keep walking, who had nothing to gain, who put herself at risk to defend someone she didn't even know. He gestured toward the side stage. Imani Johnson, would you join us? Imani walked out, wearing a dress her mother had helped her pick out. Simple, elegant, black. She looked terrified and determined in equal measure. Imani, Ethan said, demonstrated something I've spent billions of dollars trying to teach. That character isn't bought, it's built. And it shows up in moments when no one is watching and nothing is guaranteed. He turned to her, which is why the Harrington Foundation is announcing the Imani Johnson Courage Scholarship, a full-ride scholarship program for 10 students annually who demonstrate exceptional moral courage in their communities. Students like Imani, who stand up when standing up is hard. The applause was thunderous. Imani's eyes went wide. Ethan wasn't finished. Additionally, Imani's mother, Diane Johnson, is here tonight. The cameras found Diane in the audience, tears streaming down her face. Diane, you raised an extraordinary daughter while working 2 jobs and navigating unimaginable grief. In your honor, the Harrington Foundation is establishing the Diane Johnson Nursing Excellence Fund, dedicated to supporting single-parent nurses pursuing advanced degrees and certifications. Diane stood, overwhelmed, and the applause grew louder. Finally, Ethan stepped back, giving Alex room at the microphone. Alex cleared his throat. My name is Alex Harrington. I'm 16 years old, and I was born blind. For most of my life, people have treated me like I'm fragile or less capable, or like my blindness is the only thing about me that matters. Most people see my disability before they see me. He paused, his sightless eyes somehow seeming to scan the crowd. Imani saw me first. She saw someone who needed help, not because I was blind, but because I was being hurt. She didn't rescue me because she pitied me. She defended me because it was right. His voice grew stronger. I'm tired of being defined by what I can't do. I'm tired of people assuming blind means helpless. But I'm also grateful, so grateful, for people like Imani who judge us by our character instead of our challenges. He turned toward where he knew Imani was standing. Thank you for seeing me. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Spring sunshine filtered through the windows of Riverside Preparatory Academy's library. Imani sat at their usual table, helping Alex with his calculus homework while simultaneously reviewing her own college acceptance letters. MIT, Alex said, his voice awed. You got into MIT. And Stanford. And Princeton, Imani said, still processing it herself. I don't know how to choose. Choose the one that feels right. You can't go wrong, says the kid who hasn't even started the application process. I've got time, Alex said, but his tone was different now, confident instead of resigned. He'd started participating more in class, joining the debate team, even tentatively dating a girl from his chemistry class. The bullying had stopped entirely after Tyler and Marcus were expelled. More importantly, Alex had stopped seeing himself as a victim. How's your mom? Alex asked. She's good. Really good. She started her nurse practitioner program last month. She cries every time she talks about it. Imani smiled. She sends your dad a thank you card every week. He's going to have a whole collection. He keeps them all in his office. I heard him showing them to someone. They worked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Alex said, Can I tell you something? Always. I used to think my dad's money made me weak, like I was only safe because he could afford to protect me. But watching him with you, with your mom, with all the scholarship recipients, I realized money is just a tool. It's what you build with it that matters. Very philosophical, Imani teased gently. I'm serious. He built a legacy by recognizing yours. Ethan's office that evening. Diane Johnson sat across from Ethan, her posture more relaxed than it had been 6 months ago. They'd formed an unlikely friendship, 2 single parents bound by love for remarkable children and grief for absent partners. Imani chose MIT, Diane said. She told me this afternoon. Engineering. Biomedical engineering. She wants to design assistive technologies for people with disabilities. Ethan smiled. Of course she does. She said Alex inspired her, that watching him navigate the world made her realize how much innovation is still needed. They sat quietly, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Can I ask you something? Diane said eventually. Why did you do all this? Really? Ethan considered the question carefully. When Alex was born, his mother couldn't handle it. She saw his blindness as a tragedy, a flaw. something that would limit his life and, by extension, hers. She left because loving him was too hard. He paused, his throat tight. I spent 15 years trying to be enough for both parents, trying to protect him from a world that would see him as less than. But I couldn't protect him from everything. And that video of him being bullied. His voice broke slightly. I watched my son being humiliated, and I couldn't stop it without making things worse. Then Imani stepped in, Diane said softly. Then Imani stepped in, and she did what I couldn't. She gave him dignity. She saw him as someone worth defending, not out of pity, but out of principle. Ethan looked at Diane. You raised a daughter who has more courage at 16 than most people develop in a lifetime. That deserves recognition, investment, celebration. She almost didn't accept, Diane admitted. She thought it was charity, thought she didn't deserve it. What changed her mind? Alex. He told her that accepting help doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart. Ethan laughed. That's my boy. Imani stood in her MIT dorm room, video chatting with Alex, who was now a high school senior touring colleges with his father. So Cornell has an incredible assistive technology research lab, Alex was saying, his enthusiasm palpable. And the disability services coordinator is blind herself. She said I'd be the first blind student in their computer science program. You'd be amazing at computer science, Imani said. You already code better than half my engineering classmates. Dad's worried I'm choosing it just to prove a point. Are you? Alex was quiet for a moment. Maybe a little, but mostly I'm choosing it because I'm good at it. And because I want to work in tech accessibility. Make sure the next generation of blind kids has tools I never had. You sound like me. I learned from the best. They talked about his college essay, a reflection on how being defended changed him, how watching someone stand up taught him to stand up himself. They talked about Imani's latest project, a smart cane prototype with sonar feedback. They talked about everything and nothing the way close friends do. After they hung up, Imani opened her laptop to review the day's notes. Her email pinged, a message from Ethan Harrington. Imani, Alex tells me you're presenting your smart cane prototype at the Assistive Technology Conference next month. I'd be honored to attend and see what you've created. More importantly, I want you to know that watching you over these past 2 years has reaffirmed everything I believe about investing in character. You didn't just change Alex's life. You changed mine. Before you came along, I measured success in dollars and deals. Now I measure it in courage and kindness. Thank you for showing my son and me what true strength looks like. Ethan. Imani wiped her eyes, then typed a response. Mr. Harrington, you taught me that being seen is the first step to being valued. That recognition isn't charity, it's justice. And that one moment of courage can ripple outward in ways we never imagine. Alex is extraordinary because you saw him that way first. You loved him through a world that doubted him. That's the real legacy. I'll save you a seat at the presentation. Imani. The Harrington Foundation's annual gala had grown exponentially. Over 1,000 attendees now, dozens of scholarship recipients, an entire wing of programs dedicated to educational justice and opportunity. Ethan stood at the microphone, older now, grayer, but his eyes bright with purpose. 5 years ago, he said, I watched a 16-year-old girl do something that changed my family forever. She stood up when standing up was hard. She defended someone who couldn't defend himself. She demonstrated that courage isn't about size or strength. It's about choosing right over easy. The crowd knew the story, but they never tired of hearing it. Tonight, I'm honored to introduce our keynote speaker. She graduated summa cum laude from MIT with degrees in biomedical and mechanical engineering. She holds 3 patents for assistive technology devices. She was just named to Forbes 30 Under 30 list. But more importantly, she's the woman who taught my son, and me, what it means to stand for something. He smiled. Imani Johnson. Imani walked onto the stage, now 21, poised and confident. Beside her, using a smart cane she'd designed, was Alex Harrington, Cornell graduate software engineer, her business partner in their assistive technology startup. Thank you, Mr. Harrington, Imani said. Though I wish you'd stop introducing me like I'm the hero of this story. You are, Ethan said simply. No, Imani corrected gently. We all are. Alex, for refusing to let his challenges define him. You, for modeling what it means to invest in human potential. My mother, for teaching me to stand up even when standing up costs you. She paused. This story isn't about one person saving another. It's about what happens when we all choose courage over comfort. She looked out at the audience. Scholarship recipients, donors, families whose lives had been changed by programs that began with one act of intervention. 5 years ago, I saw someone being hurt and made a choice. But here's what I've learned since then. We all have that choice, every single day. We can walk past injustice or we can stop. We can stay silent or we can speak. We can watch or we can act. Alex stepped forward, joining her at the microphone. My father once told me that character shows up in moments when no one is watching, he said. But someone is always watching. Someone who might need to see courage to find their own. Together, they stood before the crowd. A blind young man and the woman who defended him, now partners in creating a more accessible world. So here's my challenge to everyone in this room, Imani concluded. Find your courtyard moment. Find the person who needs someone to stand beside them, and then stand, because that's how we change the world. Not through grand gestures, but through small acts of courage that ripple outward until they become waves. The applause was deafening. Ethan found Alex and Imani on the terrace, looking out over the city lights. You two were incredible tonight, he said. We learned from the best, Alex replied. I didn't teach you that, Ethan said, looking at Imani. She did. You taught him to recognize it, Imani said. That's just as important. They stood in comfortable silence. 3 people bound by one moment that had transformed all their futures. Dad, Alex said quietly. Thank you. For what? For teaching me that being blind doesn't make me less. For never giving up when Mom did. For showing me that love is action, not just words. Ethan pulled his son into a hug, his eyes burning. You never needed teaching, Alex. You just needed someone to see what was always there. That's what you did for me, Imani said softly. Saw what was always there. No, Ethan said, looking between them. These 2 extraordinary young people who'd found each other in a moment of crisis and built something beautiful from it. You both did that for me. Years from now, when people asked Imani Johnson what moment changed her life, she wouldn't talk about the scholarship or the patents or the Forbes list. She'd talk about a blind boy standing in a courtyard, surrounded by people who did nothing, and how she learned that day that courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about being afraid and standing anyway. When people asked Alex Harrington what gave him the confidence to pursue his dreams, he wouldn't talk about his father's wealth or resources. He'd talk about a girl who saw him when he couldn't see himself, and how she taught him that being defended isn't weakness. It's proof that you matter. And when people asked Ethan Harrington about his greatest achievement, he wouldn't point to his company or his fortune or his foundation. He'd pull out a worn video on his phone, a 16-year-old girl standing between his son and cruelty, and say, I learned to recognize the kind of courage that money can't buy, and I built everything else from there. Because in the end, this wasn't a story about a billionaire making a grand gesture. It was a story about what happens when one person chooses courage, another chooses recognition, and together they build something that outlasts them both. It was a story about a blind boy learning to see himself clearly, a black girl learning her worth wasn't determined by those who overlooked her, and a father learning that the best legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you empower others to build. The courtyard where it all began is still there at Riverside Preparatory Academy. Students pass through it every day, most not knowing its significance. But occasionally, someone will point to a plaque near the steps. In this place, courage spoke when silence reigned. May we all find the strength to stand when standing is hard. In honor of those who defend the defenseless. Beneath it, in both English and Braille, one person can change everything. And they did.